Alphafly versus the Vaporfly, probably one of the most hotly contested questions on the internet when it comes to Nike shoes. Which one is better? In today's video, I'm going to cover 8 different categories, ranking the shoes, giving each one a point to finally conclude which is the better shoe. So the first thing to discuss is some of the differences. So these are both Nike carbon racing shoes. So yes, you've guessed it, they've got carbon fiber in them. They both have ZoomX foam. They both have an 8mm drop. So the only difference really comes down to the weight. The Vaporfly in a UK size 9 weighs 206 grams, whereas the Alphafly weighs 247 grams. So when it comes to the weight difference, the Alphafly is the heaviest shoe, so I'd give a point there to the Vaporfly. 1-0 to the Vaporfly when it comes to weight. The second category for discussion today is the price point, and again there's a clear winner here. The Alphafly in the UK at the moment, on the point of recording, cost £279.95. So let's say £280 for an Alphafly, which is just crazy money. I can't believe shoe companies are now charging near £300 for super shoes, but that's a completely different video. And the Vaporfly costs £234.95. So in terms of price point, there's a £45 price point difference. But again, 2-0 to the Vaporfly. The next category for discussion is comfort, and again there's a clear winner here from what I've heard from people in the running community. A lot of people have actually had problems with the Alphafly when it comes to this area of the shoe, in the arch. If you've got a bit of a flat foot, then I've heard people really get blisters in the arch of their foot, so there is a little bit of an issue with the comfort on this one, whereas I've heard a lot better feedback on the Vaporfly. It fits a lot more feet. Also the Vaporfly 3 is probably one of the widest of the Nike carbon shoes that they've ever brought out. So in terms of comfort, I would have to again give it to the Vaporfly. 3-0, it's not looking good for Team Alphafly. So the next category for discussion is world records. Which shoe has the most impressive world record, if you like? So the Alphafly, this shoe has been at the top of the marathon game now for probably the last 2 or 3 years. With Kipchoge, the previous world record holder, running all of his top performances in a Nike Alphafly. He even broke the 2-hour barrier in a pair of Alphafly, a very special pair, but an Alphafly nonetheless. Then fast forward to the Chicago Marathon this weekend, it's just gone. Kelvin Kiptum was wearing a pair of Alphaflys when he broke the new world record, running 2 hours and 35. Admittedly, yes, don't slate me in the comments, it wasn't the Alphafly 2, it was the Alphafly 3, which is set to come out in January. But nonetheless, an Alphafly does have the current world record and the previous world records for the marathon distance. Now, interestingly, I also did a bit of digging and found out that Kelvin Kiptum, the current world record holder, wore the Vaporfly for London, running 2 hours and 1 minute and I believe 25 seconds, whereas when he switched to an Alphafly, he ran 50 seconds quicker for the world record. So in terms of marathon world records, I'd have to give a point to Team Alphafly, which makes it 3-1. But when it comes to the 5K world record on the men's side, there's a slightly different story there. The current world record is 12:49, held by Aragawi of Ethiopia. Now, he is a Nike sponsored athlete and he chose to wear the Nike Vaporfly. In fact, if you look at all the fastest times across Nike athletes in the 5K distance across both men and women, you'll see the Vaporfly dominating the choices. In fact, I don't think there'd be any Alphaflys in the top 10 performances over the 5K distance. So the clear winner for the 5K in terms of world records is the Vaporfly. The next category is durability. Now, I've run 500 kilometers in this pair of Alphafly and it's still doing pretty well. If you're wondering why it's in an orange colorway, it's because I wore it when I was out in Kenya, Iten. Yes, I know, I went to Africa. But in terms of durability, 500 kilometers in this pair, and I've ran just under 200 kilometers in a pair of Vaporflys, this pair. But based on the previous iterations as well, I would say the durability is slightly better in the Alphafly. I just found it's got a slightly more coverage on the outsole, and it doesn't seem to wear down as much in the heel area of this ZoomX foam, whereas the Vaporfly for me seems to be a little bit more stripped back, more minimal, and that does mean it wears down and compresses a little bit more readily than I would say the Alphafly does. So the next category for discussion is protectiveness. or protection from the road. It's a little bit of an odd category to be talking about, but if you've worn these shoes, then I think that is one of the key differences between an Alphafly and a Vaporfly. Just the way the shoe is constructed, the Alphafly being a little bit wider, you've got a little bit more ZoomX foam, which just makes this one a little bit more protective when it comes to road running. So I've noticed that when I wear a Vaporfly, I seem to feel a little bit more of the impact related fatigue towards the end of a longer distance race. So I've actually worn both the Vaporfly and the Alphafly for a marathon, and I found that when I wore the Vaporfly, my legs started to feel a little bit more tired a bit earlier on, whereas when I wore the Alphafly, it seemed to offer me a little bit more protection. So if protection from the road is a category or an area of concern for yourself, then I would give a point again to the Alphafly, which makes it 4-3. And the final category that I think is worth discussing is the overall responsiveness. Now between these shoes, there's very little in it, obviously both with carbon fiber plates, both with the same midsole compound. However, I would say the Alphafly just seems to give me a little bit more of a poppy feeling underfoot, which I don't know technically if that means it's more responsive, but if I had to give a point to either, I would give a point to the Alphafly in terms of responsiveness, but they have a very different feel underfoot. This feels a little bit more snappy, the energy return is much more direct, whereas the Alphafly feels a lot softer, more squishy, and a little bit more bouncy. It feels like it pops you along the road. So finally, on to my final verdict. Which shoe takes the win? Obviously 4-all across the categories, so there really isn't much in it. However, my conclusion is pretty simple. If you're racing a 5K, 10K or half marathon, then I personally would pick the Vaporfly. It's the lighter of the two. It feels a little bit more direct, and I personally feel like I can run faster paces in the Vaporfly just because of the way it's constructed. Whereas the Alphafly for me feels much more of a longer distance shoe. So if I was running a marathon tomorrow, I would pick this shoe, the Alphafly, over the Vaporfly, just mainly because it offers me a little bit more protection over the longer distances. If I could only choose one, then I probably would go for the Vaporfly. At the end of the day, it's £45 cheaper, it's lighter, and it's probably a little bit more versatile over a range of distances. I'd feel comfortable racing a 5K all the way up to a marathon in the Vaporfly, whereas the Alphafly seems a little bit more suited to the longer stuff, so slightly less versatile. So if you're somebody who's weighing up the option between getting the Alphafly and the Vaporfly, I hope this video has helped you make that conclusion. But to throw a complete spanner in the works, I think the best carbon racing shoe from Nike is actually the Alphafly 1. But yeah, hope you've enjoyed today's video. Thanks for watching. If you have, leave a like, subscribe. Let me know down in the comments, are you team Alphafly or team Vaporfly? But until next time, aspire to run, run to inspire, and I'll see you again soon.